State Representative James Talarico is one of the top Democrats running for U.S. Senate this year. Over the weekend, he faced off against Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett in their first primary debate, where candidates sparred over immigration enforcement, the economy, health care, and the future of the Democratic Party in Texas. Yesterday afternoon, Hello Houston spoke with State Representative James Talarico.
I guess the first place to start with this is most observers would say if you're looking in the primary between you and Representative Crockett, there's very little that's different when it comes to the issues and where you stand on them. So what is your advice to voters on how to decide who to cast their vote for?
Well, I have a lot of love and respect for Congresswoman Crockett. She and I served together in the State House, and so I'm hoping this can be a positive race about what we both bring to the table. And I think I bring something unique. I bring a history of winning these kinds of races. I first got elected to the State House by flipping a Trump district in a county that was so red it hadn't voted for a Democrat for president since Jimmy Carter. And I was told by the powers that be in the Democratic Party back then that the race was unwinnable, that flipping this Trump district was impossible. But my neighbors and I, we ran an aggressive, authentic, unorthodox campaign that brought people together. And on election night, we flipped that district with 51% of the vote. And it was because I was able to build a big coalition. I was able to inspire Democrats to get off the couch and show up to vote. I was able to bring in new voters, particularly young voters who were excited to see a young candidate running. And then I was able to peel people off from the middle and even from the right to build a big tent. And that's what's needed in this race. We have to win in November, because if we don't win, we can't help people. And I've seen the consequences of losing elections up close in the Texas legislature, and I'm tired of losing at the ballot box. I think that skill set of flipping seats and winning difficult races is something that I bring that's unique to this primary fight.
But, Representative Talarico, respectfully, based on your voting record, many would describe you as a progressive Democrat. You have been vocal about public education, healthcare access, and pushing forward democratic reform. You've also voted against certain Republican fiscal and social policies. In Texas, we've seen Democrats labeled as moderate still lose statewide races to conservative Republicans. What do you think explains that pattern? And what do you think your approach is going to be to actually break through a very red line?
The first words out of my mouth on this campaign were, the real fight in this country is not left versus right, it's top versus bottom. And so I don't really see politics anymore on a left to right spectrum. And I don't think most Texans see politics that way anymore. There are a handful of billionaires who run our government, who run our economy, who run our country. And we need someone with experience going toe-to-toe with those billionaire mega donors. Y'all know that in the Texas legislature, I took on Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilks and Betsy DeVos and Jeff Yass, the billionaires who were trying to dismantle public education in this state. And now those billionaires are pushing the same agenda at the federal level. They're pushing a federal voucher scam that's going to defund our schools. They're gutting the Department of Education. We saw that with Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, who was destroying our government from within and destroying programs that help working people. And so I have a history of taking on that kind of corruption. And in this campaign, I have outlined a comprehensive anti-corruption agenda to ban corporate PACs, to ban super PACs, to ban members of Congress from trading stocks and enriching themselves. We have to get big money out of our politics if we're going to have a government of, by, and for the people again. And I'm the only candidate in this race that doesn't take corporate PAC money. I have never taken corporate PAC money. And it's not saying that I'm not trapped in a broken political system like everybody else, but I've at least tried to take steps to limit that influence in my office. And I have proposed measures at the state level and now at the federal level that could get big money out of our politics once and for all.
I appreciate most of your funding is small donations, $100 or less. There was a report in Politico that you'd taken some funding from Miriam Adelson.
Yeah, and that's incorrect.
It is incorrect.
I've never taken a donation from Miriam Adelson. I don't know Miriam Adelson.
Why do you think
don't plan on getting?
Why is that out there?
Because I support legalized gambling in Texas. I think it's good public policy, and most Texans agree with me. We are losing business to Oklahoma and to Louisiana that we could be bringing back to Texas and then taxing those industries to fund our neighborhood schools. Texas ranks 43rd in the nation in per student education funding. We have teachers driving Ubers at night because they don't earn enough on the job. And so legalizing gambling in Texas and taxing that industry would bring in desperately needed tax revenue into our public schools. And so I think that's where folks make that connection.
Well, and you are a former school teacher.
That's right.
So what do you think about the Department of Education being abolished?
I mean, I think it's unconscionable. And the fact that the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, defunded the Department of Education that so many students, so many educators rely on, to me is deeply immoral. And we need a proven fighter in the U.S. Senate who knows how to fight for our schools, fight for our students, fight for our teachers. I think we need a teacher in the U.S. Senate. We've got a lot of lawyers, we've got a lot of business people, but we don't have enough educators who are there to fight for our kids and fight for our teachers. And I have a track record of doing it at the state level, and I want to bring that fight to our nation's capital.
But, Representative Talarico, I want to go back really quickly to the top versus bottom framework. And can you talk to us about a concrete policy that you would implement that would essentially change the way a traditional Democrat would go forward putting policy if you were elected into this position?
Well, I just outlined our anti-corruption agenda. And again, this is corruption that infects both political parties, both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. We have seen insider trading. We have seen Democrats and Republicans in the halls of the U.S. Congress trading individual stocks and enriching themselves through their position of public trust. And so again, this is why I don't see it as left versus right. I really do see it as all of us, working people, whether you're a little more progressive or a little more conservative, all of us against the people at the very top, the mega donors and their puppet politicians who have rigged this economy, who have rigged this government in their favor and at our expense. And so to me, that's what people are looking for. And then, I think we've got to talk about how we're going to restructure this economy. I have fought to raise the minimum wage. I have fought for paid family leave. I have fought on, cracking down on giant corporations that pay their employees so little that they have to rely on food stamps just to get by. And I think that's the kind of leadership people are looking for from a U.S. senator. Not someone who's partisan, not someone who is just there to fight the other party, but someone who's there to deliver for working people and take on these special interests.
In that vein, Social Security may be done in 2032 if we don't do something about it. That would be the final year of a 6-year term from 2026. What's your plan?
Yeah, we have constantly seen Social Security and Medicare attacked by the current leadership in Washington, D.C., all while those same Republicans gave $3 trillion in tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans through the Trump tax cuts. So if there is $3 trillion for rich people to get a tax cut, then there is enough money to make sure Social Security is solvent into the future. There's enough money to ensure everyone has access to good quality public schools, has access to basic health care. Whenever you talk about things like Social Security or healthcare education, you'll hear this refrain that there's not enough money. But clearly there is enough money because they are giving it away to the richest 1%. And that's a population that doesn't need any help. So again, we have got to take back control of our government and make sure that it works for all of us and not just the billionaires who give money to politicians and are able to rig the rules in their own favor.
One issue that's gotten a lot of traction on social media, and I'd love for you to help me through this particular issue. It has to do with lowering the price and capping the price on insulin.
Yeah.
And you have an ad out there in which you say, so when I got to the Texas House, I took on Big Pharma and capped insulin at $25 a month.
That's right.
Senator Kolkhorst came out and said respectfully, she wanted to set the record straight that it was Republicans that did it, not you, and that she puts in her post a track of how it went from the Senate to the House and how it got voted in. Yeah. Can you help me see through this?
Yeah, if you read the Texas Tribune's story about this commentary from Republican Senator Kolkhorst, you will see text messages between the senator and I where I brought the issue of capping insulin to her way before she ever filed a bill. And then she responded thanking me for bringing this to her attention and working with her on this issue. And then I publicly thanked Senator Kolkhorst for helping me cap the cost of insulin. And I'm thankful to all the members of the legislature who helped me with this issue. But to now in campaign season, for her to deny my role in passing that legislation and to take, sole credit for that accomplishment, to me is politics at its worst. We should be proud that we worked across the aisle to get that done. I remember that when I got the bill through committee, I shared my personal struggle with type 1 diabetes. I shared how I almost died when I was 28 years old from going into diabetic ketoacidosis, and how when I got out of the ICU, I went to Walgreens to get my first 30-day supply of insulin, and it cost me $684. And by sharing that story publicly, we were able to build the political momentum and the public support to get the bill over the finish line. And so I was able to get it through committee. I was able to get it through the calendars committee and onto the floor, and was a sponsor of that Senate bill. So again, this is politics at its worst, and I get it because it's campaign season. So now suddenly all the Republicans and Democrats got to be on the red team and the blue team. But back in 2021, it's well documented, and the Texas Tribune went through this, that this was a team effort, and I was proud to lead that team.
Does it encourage you that she's attacking at this point in the campaign? Does that tell you they see you as a threat?
I think so, and I think these kind of attacks are going to be coming, in this race, and I'm going to be ready to defend my record. I'm going to defend this people-powered campaign because it is a threat to the people in power. It's a threat to their donors. It's a threat to their extremism and their corruption. And I take that as a badge of honor.
Well, along those lines, there's some chatter that your opponent in this particular run right now is going to come after you, and maybe not in such a nice way.
Well, I read that report too, and I hope it's not true. I have called Congresswoman Crockett a friend. I've called her a colleague and a leader. I think we should be running a positive race based on our track records, based on our experiences. And we shouldn't be spending valuable time and resources attacking our fellow Texas Democrats, especially when we face the Herculean task of trying to flip this district in November. But if I or our campaign is attacked, I will defend myself. I'll defend my record and tell the truth to the voters in this primary.
Have your two campaigns been in conversation with each other, or has it been pretty much separate?
Well, I way back in the summer of last year after the legislative session, when I was first thinking about running for the seat, Congresswoman Crockett was actually one of the first people I called because I have such respect for her and she and I are friends. And so I wanted to make sure that she wasn't looking at running in this Senate race in 2026. And she told me that she was, focused on her work in the Congress and was looking at running in 2030. And so that's why I threw my hat in the ring, because we needed someone to step up and run for this seat. And of course, the Congresswoman has the right to change her mind, and she changed her mind on the last day of the filing period. I just hope that this campaign can be a positive one, where she's putting forward her track record, her experiences, and what she has to offer, and I'm doing that for my campaign. I don't think we should be spending precious time and resources attacking and tearing down each other, especially when we have such a big task ahead of us in November.
Representative Talarico, I want to talk about fiscal responsibility. And when we look at fiscal responsibility, where should voters expect you to say no to spending?
Well, I was proud to lead the fight against private school vouchers because I believe in fiscal responsibility. I talked often about how these tax dollars are precious. I work hard for the little money I make, and I pay my taxes, and that's true of most Texans. And so our elected officials should be stewards of those precious taxpayer dollars. And so when I see here at the state level politicians giving those tax dollars to wealthy parents who already have their kids in private school, it makes me mad. When I see lawmakers at the federal level giving tax cuts to very wealthy people in the top 1%, that makes me mad. We are taking tax dollars from plumbers and nurses and giving it to people who don't need any help. I'll also say, the last time we balanced the budget in this country was under a Democratic administration. And I think the track record is very clear that when you have elected leaders who are responsive to the people, we are much more careful with our taxpayer funds. And I think we should all, regardless of our party, speak out when we see the waste and the abuse of our precious resources, like what we saw in the Trump tax cuts.
As we sit here right now, once again, what's looming is a government shutdown.
Yeah.
When do you think it's appropriate to shut down the government?
Well, I think the majority is the only one that can keep the government open. If they need support from the minority, they should give something in exchange. That is how our representative democracy is supposed to work. And so I think it's very reasonable for Democrats, when they're in the minority, to ask for something in exchange for their vote to keep the government running. And so far, the Democrats in Congress have asked for very reasonable things, not jacking up healthcare premiums for millions of Texans, and basic accountability for ICE. You know, we saw just over the past month that ICE shot a mom in the face. ICE kidnapped a 5-year-old boy, Liam Ramos, and brought him here to Texas. ICE shot a man in the back, killing him on our own streets in broad daylight over the weekend. And so asking for basic accountability for this agency, to me, is the bare minimum that we should be requesting from the executive branch. And I think withholding our vote on keeping the government open is a very reasonable thing to do in the face of this kind of extremism and corruption.
What do you say to a Texan who is thinking, this guy sounds great, but he's going against big money, big politics? You said it yourself, Herculean type system. He will never win in the state of Texas.
I don't think you should believe anything a politician says. I think you should look at what a politician has done. And I've won races like this. I was written off as a candidate in Williamson County. I was the underdog in that race. And I was able to go to all of my neighbors, Democrats, Independents, and Republicans alike, and I was able to earn their trust, earn their respect, and earn their support. We didn't agree on everything. I don't agree with anyone on anything. I doubt I agree with any of you on 100% of the issues. But I do make 3 simple promises to voters. 1, I will always listen to you. I'll always be accessible to you. 2, I will always tell you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's unpleasant. And 3, I will always fight for you, even if you don't vote for me. And that was enough to earn the majority of the vote in Williamson County. I think I proved to my neighbors that I was their champion in the Texas Capitol. It's why I got reelected and why I was named one of the top 10 legislators by Texas Monthly Magazine. And that is the promise I'm now making to voters across Texas. It's why I'm going to every corner of this state to earn their trust, earn their respect. And I will be their champion in the halls of power in Washington, D.C., just like I was in the Texas Capitol.
State Representative James Talarico, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you all for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
You just heard our interview yesterday with State Representative James Talarico, one of the top Democrats running for U.S. Senate this year. The producers of Hello Houston have reached out to Jasmine Crockett's campaign, and we are awaiting for her response.